Hello, friends. It's great to be back with you again in this 42nd podcast that we have. We're getting there, about 10 more to go to finish off. But today we begin with the Gospel of John, a very beloved gospel as well, and has its own differences as with the others. Very unique in some ways, especially if you think about a birth narrative. There's not really in the sense as Mary and Joseph had a child and his name was Jesus. It begins as Jesus was the very beginning. Jesus was with God from the very beginning, and in the beginning he was there from everything. Everything happened through him, and so it different and causes a little bit different, just a little bit different way to look at things and look at it, but through explaining how he as the word was life, and how that life brought light to people, and how that light shines in the darkness and the darkness can extinguish it. So a lot of positive characteristics, traits, things like that that really describes Jesus in the first about 5 verses. And then it talks about a man named John was sent from God. So a whole bunch of differences you don't hear about the beginnings, but that's why we have the other gospels to hear a little bit more about. These are just different ways to look at.
Absolutely, this just soaring poetry
Mm-hmm.
of the prologue, as it is known, of chapter 1, this beginning, it's hard, at least for me, not to hear it as poetry. And to not, I mean, it's not printed in that way in our modern translations, but it's, I mean, it's intended to just lift us into the cosmos.
Yes. Absolutely.
Years ago, I was a part of a church where we had a domed sanctuary, and on Christmas Eve we hung a disco ball, mirrored ball, in the dome, and made the sanctuary completely dark, and began with that phrasing of, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. God said, let there be light, and a single light shone on the disco ball, and lights appeared on the whole dome. And then the narrative began to have the sound of a distant heartbeat as we moved into this phrasing of, the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us.
Yes.
Just, I mean, it's meant to be a song, a poem, an image that we just stand before in wonder, not really something that we are supposed to dissect and figure out. I don't think that, I think that the point is just the sense of wonder and amazement.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, and we get right after this, and John begins a testimony, basically about, he's telling the Jewish leaders about it, but they're asking him who he is. Like, and it's a little, the different aspect of, and he says, they're kind of thinking he is the Messiah or Elijah or something coming back. And in this aspect, though, he confesses at this point, like, I'm not the Christ. Like, and you hear him, and then they like begin to question, well, are you Elijah? Who are you? And he's like, no. He said he's not a prophet, and he finally says, I'm a voice. I'm a voice who's crying out in the wilderness to one who's to come, basically making the Lord straight for the one to come. But that was just a prophet.
Which of course makes him into Elijah.
Right. Yes. Yeah. He does. He just doesn't.
He doesn't see it in.
Yes.
Correct. I think that the key thing here is that no true instrument of God will declare, I am an instrument of God.
Right. Lots of truth in that.
The one
Absolutely.
who says, I am acting on behalf of God, is the very one that we're pretty sure isn't.
It's very true. Very true, that aspect. You know, they keep, because they even question, like, if he's baptizing, like, if he's not the Christ, if he's not Elijah, if he's not a prophet, then how's he able to do these things? You know, and he goes on to says, I baptize with water, but someone greater stands among you whom you don't recognize. He comes after me, but I'm not worthy to untie his sandal straps. This encounter took place across the Jordan. But he says the next day he sees Jesus, and in this one you actually hear him saying, look, the Lamb of God that takes away the sin of the world. This is the one who I'm talking about.
And yet John doesn't baptize
Right, he does,
Jesus in the
exactly.
Gospel of John.
Correct.
There's no
Correct.
baptism.
Right, right.
There's only that declaration.
Right, right. Yeah, I noticed that too. That was one of the things I was thinking about. You don't actually see or hear about the baptism actually happening. And then because right after this, you know, Jesus begins calling his disciples, you know, and
we have
aspect.
One of probably my very favorite, well, I can't say, I don't know, one of my favorite stories, Philip and Nathaniel.
Oh, yeah.
What an iconic story. Nathaniel says to Philip, we found him. And Philip says, can anything good come from Nazareth? And, you know, there is this strange little, there's this strange little moment where Nathaniel says to Jesus, how do you know me?
Yeah.
And Jesus said, I saw you under the fig tree.
Mm-hmm.
And we never know
Right.
what that means.
Right.
We have no idea. Was Jesus just accidentally overhearing when Philip told right. Nathaniel? Right. Did he just happen to be passing by and heard this? Can anything good come from Nazareth? Or is this, you know, was the fig tree such a private moment for Nathaniel that only the Almighty could know what happened
what he was
there?
doing? Yeah. Very.
I choose to think the latter, but we'll never know.
Right. No, we don't. You don't hear. You don't know anything except Nathaniel just says, "Come and see." You know, just comes, and then that's when, you know, all this happens, because Philip's just like.
Isn't that the best evangelism possible, though?
Yes.
For all of us to say to our friends and neighbors,
come and see.
I found something.
Yep.
Come and try it out.
Try it out. Yep.
Just come and see for yourself.
Yep. Very simple.
We tend to make it into, okay, here, let me give you the 4 spiritual laws and the sinner's prayer, and use this pamphlet, and you know, instead of I found what gives meaning to my life. Yeah. I'd like that for you.
Yeah.
Come and try.
Come and try. Yeah. I mean, just craziness. But it's not like crazy, but it seems pretty simple. Like, as I said when in a workshop that I was in, it's like we make evangelism more hard than it really needs to be. And I think because we see it, we always thinking of evangelism as, oh, you have to go knock on a door and you have to do this and you have to do that, and you really don't. All you have to do, as we said, it's simple enough to just say, come and see, come and try us out, come and, you know, we got this ministry, we got this, whatever we got going on, just
give it a try.
Give it a try. And if you don't
maybe
like it,
isn't.
Right.
Maybe this won't work for you.
Right. But it's nothing that we have. It's nothing difficult that we make it harder than what it is.
Exactly.
Is what I think, and I think exactly in that aspect.
Well, we move from that into the first of what are called the signs in the Gospel of John. The Gospel of John is unique in that it speaks of six signs, not not miracles, but signs. And we hear the famous story of Jesus turning water into
To
wine.
wine. Yeah.
And you know it how we understand that. I think we remember hearing a Art Linkletter kids say the darndest thing kind of clip where Art Linkletter told this story and said, "What do you think? What do you think it means?" And one little girl blurted out, "Whenever Jesus shows up, there's a party." That's not a bad reading of this
It's
particular
true. That's
story.
true. It's an interesting part is to even Jesus get into this and to get thinking together. You don't think of it as, but you have to realize these whatever you want to
Signs.
call them, signs. Well, the water jars, so to
Oh,
speak,
right.
as mine says. These weren't just normal water. These
Oh,
were
yeah, no.
huge, holding probably
30, 40
30 gallons
gallons.
of water at the time, and I mean huge things. And so this wasn't just like a little. This was a lot of wine that was passing through this, and to hear the wedding director, if you want to call it whatever you want to call him at the time, what you'd call it today,
So,
to say like, but
so there's
everybody
a
gives this thing.
so there's a great Latin phrase that would qualify for this person in Roman society when Romans had parties. There was a person whose title was Master Babinde, which literally means master of the drinking. And it was that person's job to measure
Mix
out the
everything.
wine and mix it with just enough water to keep the party
Everything goes.
going. And so that's the steward of the
There you
steward of
go.
the wine, the
Yep,
Magister Babinde.
yep. But yet, in this whole aspect, as we're going, even at this time, uh, Mary, his mother, is just knows what he can do, and he's like, but it's not my time yet. Like, don't get me involved. It's not time for me to go. And she just almost ignores it at that point and just tells this, just do what he tells you. Like, what's the one?
Again, what a wonderful image of a mother and a son. Who, what son or mother has not had this conversation? For some version thereof.
To go through, yeah.
I can't do it. I'll just do it.
Just do it, and I could just say, "Mom," just
Right,
it's just
right,
what we do
right,
today.
right,
You know,
right. Or as my children would say, "Mother."
yeah, that's right. Yeah, and you get through this part, and we get you know, uh, into this aspect. Jesus in this story, right after this, Jesus cleanses the temple. It happens really early in John, where others that happens later in ministry. But good.
Which
Tell
I
me,
think is one of the important things for us to,
yeah,
I hate to keep hammering this point that the Gospels were never intended to be a biography.
correct.
And we should let each of the four stand on their
Where they
own.
go, right?
If we
Absolutely.
try and squish these four stories together and make it into a unified biography, then we have to believe that Jesus did this cleansing of the temple twice. And some of our brothers and sisters in the faith absolutely believe that. And I can't.
Right.
I can't believe that Jewish or Roman society would have let him do it
Twice.
twice.
No.
It's not that I don't think he could.
But,
I just think that if he had done it at the beginning
right.
of his ministry, the next time he came towards the temple, I absolutely believe that a Jewish official would have said,
Someone
"No,
would have
no, don't let him in
been. That's
here."
right.
That no.
Amen to that. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, because they ask the similar signs. By what authority are you doing these things? And so those, and they even say after this, like, well, what miraculous signs will you show? I mean, it's like they're asking questions that weren't really, they were asked at different times of the thing too, and this at their
Exactly.
times it's just some combined and together. And then through this, then we get into the story of Jesus and Nicodemus, which uh, another one, and sometimes is hard for people to relate to, in just the way it's explained in the thing. Because I think it's hard for people to understand just like Nicodemus struggled to understand. I think it's hard for people to relate. Like, what does it really mean to be born of above, or more in this way? What does that really look like in our society, and understanding, and trying to get people to understand. But it was interesting because you see differences, and we'll see it as others too. In this instance, obviously Nicodemus is interested in some reason, but he visits Jesus at night. Probably, who knows? You hear many things. I mean, it's like, well, he didn't want to come in a day because people would accuse him of being a follower of Jesus and all these kind of things. For whatever reason, he comes at night, and he begins having this conversation with Jesus about, well, another of these signs, for some word of this, and he says to him, he says, "We know you're a teacher who has come from God, for no one could do these miraculous signs that you do unless God is with them." And Jesus says, "I assure you, unless someone is born anew or born above, however you say, it's not possible to see God's kingdom." And this is where things begin to, like, it's confusing for Nicodemus. He's like, "What do you mean? How can I be born? How can you be born? You can't go back to your mother's room. How do this happen?"
And I think it's interesting that Nicodemus, as you say, begins with nobody can do these miraculous signs. But in the Gospel of John, the only thing Jesus has done
Yeah.
is change
Water
water
into
into
wine.
wine,
Yep.
and nobody knows he did it.
Well, the only one that would maybe is the servants. But did they say anything?
And would anybody listen to
Right.
him?
Right.
Uh, we
Yeah.
move we
Yes.
move from Nicodemus to the woman at the well.
Mm-hmm. Very
Again,
powerful.
as you say,
Mm.
one of those iconic stories
Yep.
that
Yep.
that we spend a fair bit of time talking about why was this woman there at
Mm-hmm.
noontime? Um, what was she looking for? Certainly an important story for us.
Yeah.
We move into the healing of
Yeah.
the official's son.
Son.
Um, you know, and Jesus healing from a distance,
Mm-hmm.
defined
Identity.
as
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
defined as the second
The meat.
sign.
Mm-hmm.
Then we move into the healing of a disabled man and the pool at
Yeah.
Bethsaida.
Mm-hmm. Everything that happened, like, and that was one of them that got him because it happened on the Sabbath, and people, you know, they just didn't understand why Jesus had to heal on this particular day of this figure time. But even though this man, they all believed, if once the pool stirred and Bethsaida, that if they got there, then if you could get there, they would be healed. And the man was just like, well, I can never get there because I can't walk and I can't do these things. And Jesus just tells him to get up,
So
pick up
just
his
go
mat,
ahead
and
and
walk.
walk.
Just go ahead
Just go ahead
and
and
just
walk
do
now.
it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And this becomes a whole situation because they like, I ask the man, it's like, why are you carrying your mat? Like, you're not supposed to be carrying your mat on the Sabbath. And And he's like, well, the guy that healed me told me to
To
pick up my
take my
mat
mat.
and go.
Didn't want to leave it there
That's
and
right.
litter. Right.
You know, and just thinking of everything they wanted to do. You know, it was just one of
Yeah.
the situations in
I
that situation. Yeah.
I know a number of you, and I think Dan, I've shared with you that chapter 5, verse 19 is in many ways um, my favorite verse. I tell you the solemn truth, he said, the Son of Man can do nothing by himself. He can only do what he sees the Father doing. That sense that while he walked on earth, Jesus was continually looking to say, Father, where are you moving?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yep.
I want to go do what you're doing.
Yep.
And if it's true of Jesus, then it ought to be true of us.
Yeah.
That we ought to be saying, I can do nothing except that which I see the Father doing first in the old translation.
Yeah.
And I think of a professor of mine in seminary who used to talk about praying to see the things that God is doing so that I can go and be a part of that instead of, how often in my life I have basically announced to God, okay, this is what I'm going to do. It would be helpful if you came along.
Yeah.
But I'm going to do it one way or the other.
Yeah. 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 So we get through, part of this whole thing. We get through in chapter 6, the feeding of the 5,000. Again, this is the one story that's in all four gospels. And then we get to the situation of Jesus walking on water. A little different, and he walks on water, just different scenarios. In chapter 6, verse 16, he says that the disciples go down, they get into a boat and crossing, and Jesus has gone off, probably to pray, to get some time, and he comes back and he says the water's getting rough, and he's approaching the boat, and they were afraid, and he just said to them, I am, don't be afraid, and they so they do, and then the next day the crowd finds them, they get through this, and then they find on the other side, he said, they ask him, like, how did you get here, because he knows he wasn't part of that aspect in the things. And then and you get into the situation about the bread of life, in aspect, and how he talks about himself, and how people, how you need that he's the bread of life, and if you partake of him. But you, in this aspect, though, this is in all of this, when you read it, it can seem it's a very harsh reading for them, and even the disciples say, like, this is harsh. And some disciples, which clearly says disciples, it's not 12 by many, he's more than 12 now. He says many his disciples turned away because they couldn't deal with the teaching that he was giving. And Jesus says, so are you going to go too? Basically, he turns to the 12. He's like, are you going to go too? And Jesus like, well, where would we go? Like, you have the words that we need. And it's almost that part of it's almost like a confession again through Peter, not as the Christ, but as you are the one who has the words of eternal life. Like, we believe and know. Mine says that you are God's Holy One. Now, if that's could be similar saying you are that, we don't know, but then he goes on, and then you get into chapter 7 as he's going into Jerusalem. He teaches again in the temple, and I mean, and chapter 7 has a lot of him teaching in the temple about what he talks about in different aspects. As he talks about Moses, he talks about the commandments. he says to them, I think it's in verse 28, he says to them, while teaching in a temple, he exclaimed, "You know me and where I am from. I haven't come on my own. The one who sent me is true, and you don't know him." So he's still continuing to go through the whole process and the relationship of him in Jesus, um, or him and God. And then as he goes through, he goes through testing. He continues to teach through. He heals a blind man. That was the big thing about the healing with the blind man, because people believed that his parents had to have sinned, and Jesus said, well, neither him nor his parents sinned. It was done to glorify him. And but yet even those in the temple believed, even when he mentioned, like, do you want to become a, when the man says to them, do you want to become one of the disciples too, because I've already told you how this has happened. And they criticize him and expel him from the temple because of his words, of what he did.
Yeah. Well, there's a whole lot more that we could talk
Mhm.
about in the Gospel of John. We could certainly spend another hour talking about the Good Shepherd and the sheep and
Mm.
all of the teachings that are in there. But I think that'll be a good spot for us to draw to a conclusion
Yes.
for this week. Thank you again for joining us. We appreciate you listening and continuing along with this journey.
Yes, and we hope you keep enjoying with us and hang in there as we're getting through the stretch of it here. We just hope you have a great day.